ADR. Promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar, 1 o'clock in Lagos. Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink, and here are the top stories. Mixed reactions trail Ivorian government's decision to fund October election without donor support.
What surprises me is that it is foreigners who are financing our election. Is that normal? It is not normal.
They now tell themselves that they are independent before they had asked for help. And why this time reject European aid?
National Transitional Council in Mali approves Government Action Program 2025 to 2026. Nigeria, Benin Republic launched Sigma connectivity platform to facilitate trade.
So for us in Nigeria, Sigma reflects our strategic ambition to align with regional digital customs standards.
But the system which really to define and facilitate the move of the goods from Abidjan through Cotonou to Benin.
And Ghana's health service heightened surveillance at borders, entry points across the country following 4 confirmed mpox cases. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Imo Edit with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast. We'll begin in Cote d'Ivoire, where ahead of the October presidential election, reactions is trailing government decision to fully fund the general polls. Traditionally, the country has relied on donor support to organize its elections. However, Abidjan now aims to finance its elections independently without external assistance. This decision has prompted mixed reactions among the Ivorian public. Some citizens argue that a sovereign state should finance its elections, asserting that relying on external aid can encourage interference in the country's internal affairs. On the other hand, some citizens view the government's decision as a state strategy to evade the international community's scrutiny of the electoral process. Well, here are the citizens' reactions.
What surprises me is that it is foreigners who are financing our election. Is that normal? It is not normal. It is absurd to see that foreigners will finance our election. So that means if they are financing, it is because they have a stake in it. You see, it is not fair. No, to me, what is fair is what we take care of our own affairs. Cote d'Ivoire is independent. If it believes it can finance elections, I see no problem with that. Because if the international community is going to give, the thing will be postponed. If we can be self-sufficient, I believe that.
They now tell themselves that they are independent before they had asked for help. And why this time reject European aid? It is because they have a fixed idea. They want to impose their dicta. This is not normal. In this country, elections have always been financed by the international community, and there have always been both national and international observers. Why we have excluded all the opponents? With whom are we going to hold the election? It is in this spirit that they are.
You had the Ivorians reacting to the government's decision to fully fund the October 2025 presidential election, excluding donor aid. Now let's head to the Sahel, specifically Mali, where the parliament on Monday approved the government action program unanimously by the 128 votes of the National Transitional Council, NTC. The Prime Minister, Major General Abdoulaye Mega, submitted to questions from the members of the NTC at the CICB. For more than 8 hours, the Prime Minister kept the honorable members of the NTC in suspense on more than 300 questions relating to the 8 axes of the framework, let on which the areas of intervention of the government action program presented on Friday, May 16, are structured. From flood risk to youth employment, including the security of people and their property, as well as the financing of the SAPAG, the members of the NTC raised concerns of national scope within the main objective of meeting the needs of the populations in a context marked by an important place occupied by Mali in the regional and international levels. Well, here is an excerpt of his responses to the over 300 questions.
About the question of how to ensure the supply of the city of Tombouctou after the closure of the borders, the Minister of Industry and Trade has been in contact with private sector actors with a view to developing a procurement strategy for the northern regions in a year of primary need. In the case of petroleum products, particularly hydrocarbons, the minister recently led a mission to Niamey, Niger, to supply the northern regions. Contracts have been signed between economic operators and the Nigerian petroleum company to secure the supply of our country. It should be recalled that consultations between states and the private sectors have begun to bear fruit with the arrival in Gao and a first convoy secured by ANUFAMA last week.
The Prime Minister of Mali, Major General Abdoulaye Mega, speaking there. Meanwhile, the government of Mali and Niger have signed an energy agreement. Under this agreement, Niamey will supply 150 million litres of diesel to Bamako at a reduced cost. This fuel supply will help Mali operate its power plants effectively. The agreement follows a recent visit of the Malian Minister of Industry and Trade to Niger. Sankli Janko has the details of this development.
The signing of this agreement between Nigerian Petroleum Company and the Mali Energy Agency amounts to 49.2 billion CFA francs. Niger commits to supplying 150 million litres of diesel to Mali at 328 CFA francs per litre. This rate is significantly lower than the price of diesel in Mali, which is sold at 775 CFA francs per litre. This energy agreement between the two countries aimed to support Mali in its fuel supply, enabling the country to power its power plants. The agreement also provides for the supply of hydrocarbons to the northern regions of the country, which are facing a fuel shortage. The price has risen to 2,000 CFA francs. The situation exacerbated by the closure of the border between Mali and Algeria. The signing of this memorandum of understanding is therefore a welcome relief for the population, as Mali has been facing an energy crisis for more than 2 years. This fuel supply will enable the country to improve its electricity supply. Power outages, which can last several hours, have an impact on economic activity.
That was a report from our Bamako correspondent, Aliu Cham, and voiced by Sankli Janko.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Elsewhere, the Gambia's Foreign Minister, Mamadou Tangara, has expressed concern regarding the misconduct of certain Gambian diplomats that have resulted in embarrassment, expulsions and recalls. During an engagement event over the weekend, Minister Tangara mentioned an incident involving a brawl between an ambassador and a protocol officer, as well as another case where a diplomat was asked to leave a diplomatic conference due to inappropriate attire. The foreign minister stated that President Adama Barrow has now adopted a very firm stance, declaring that anyone involved in such incidents will be recalled or removed from diplomatic positions. Here is an extract from the minister's statement.
In some cases also, we have people who are political appointees. And I have nothing against political appointees. Some of them are doing extremely well. Unfortunately, some of them go there and think they are entitled and become even a stumbling block in some of our embassies. I was embarrassed. I attended a program where one of our diplomats were asked to leave the table because of the way he was dressed. So these are simple things that people need to understand. And the way you talk. A mere pronouncement can jeopardize your relationship with a whole country. In fact, in some of the diplomatic schools, they are mentioning these cases. Sorry to say, where an ambassador fought with a protocol officer. And a Gambian was attending that course in Malta. They said they don't want to mention the country, but she knows they were referring to her. So she said, it's my country. So these are some of the embarrassing situations that you face. Not only one case, just recently, but now the president has taken a very firm stand on that. If there is any such thing, we recall the diplomats involved and we ask them to leave the field.
The Gambia's Foreign Affairs Minister, Mamadou Tangara. In Liberia, President Joseph Boakai has stressed the significance of domestic resource mobilization as a key component of his government's Agenda for Inclusive Development, AAID. He made the statement during a cabinet meeting on Monday, which centered on the implementation of the government's strategic plan. The meeting garnered attention for its emphasis on transparency and accountability, revealing concerning insight into the management of funds and government policies. WDL's Monrovia correspondent Abraham Parker reports.
In his address during the meeting, President Boakai expressed concern about the issue of mobile money transactions, highlighting a disconnection between government officials and the financial needs of ordinary Liberians. He pointed out that a significant share of mobile money investments was being misallocated, with 20% of shares intended for local investors being funded to unidentified parties. The president made it clear that public resources must be managed by the government, not corporate entities, asserting that these funds should directly benefit the citizens, including allocations for universities and support for the disabled.
And I have written a letter to let the central bank know, and if they insist we're going to go further, but that 20% rating to come to government, and we'll take that 20%, government will use it for the purpose of the country.
President Boakai also addressed the frequent travel by ministers without proper notifications, urging them to prioritize their deputies and increase public engagements. He stressed that ministers should represent their ministries actively, citing the need for accountability in the allocation and usage of foreign funds across the sectors.
Ministers and people are traveling. They write letters when they are already on the way or already gone, supposed to ask permission to travel. As a matter of fact, you must understand that all travel are government funds.
Held at the tea house of the executive mansion, the cabinet meeting reaffirms President Boakai's dedication to transparency and effective resource management, urging all cabinet ministers to uphold these values for the betterment of Liberia's development trajectory. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
The Nigerian Customs Service and the Benin Republic Customs Administration on Monday flagged off a seamless digitalized cross-border trade facilitation process tagged SIGMART connectivity to enable both countries to tap into the $3.4 trillion African Continental Free Trade Agreement after trade. Established in 2018 and operationalized in January 2021, the AFTA creates a market of 1.3 billion people and a combined gross domestic product GDP of $3.4 trillion. Speaking on Monday during the launch in Senegal Joint Border Post, the Comptroller General of the Nigerian Customs Service, Bashir Adewale Adeniyi, stated that the launch of SIGMART connectivity marks a major milestone in Nigeria and Benin Republic's collective pursuit of seamless trade integration and regional economic transformation across West Africa.
So for us in Nigeria, SIGMART reflects our strategic ambition to align with regional digital customs standards and modernization of our trade corridor. We would look forward to strengthening bilateral communication mechanisms to ensure timely technical engagement between our customs administrations. In the near future, we will be able to expand the deployments of SIGMART to additional border locations, particularly in places like Idiroko, Chikanda, and the new place that we are planning to develop in Samia. As we deploy this program, these pilots, we will look forward to establishing a task force that will be charged with the responsibility of monitoring the deployments, reporting successes and challenges that we have.
For her part, Adijatu Zanuvi, DG Benin Republic Customs Administration, explained that though the process will help streamline the process of documentation of consignments existing or entering Nigeria, there should not be network glitches.
It will facilitate the move of the goods and also will help our customs services to fight against any fraud, to have an exhaustivity in collecting revenue, and also facilitate really, because most of the time you will see that it's only controlling, but the system will really fluidify and facilitate the move of the goods from Abidjan, which is already in the SIGMAT system, from Abidjan all the way through Cotonou to Benin and then through Nigeria. And also when goods are coming from Nigeria to use the corridor, SIGMAT will facilitate.
6 West African countries, namely Nigeria, Benin Republic, Togo, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire and Burkina Faso, are now on the SIGMAT connectivity trade platform. Meanwhile, here in Senegal, a phosphate mining plant is set to be established in the Matam region, located in the northern part of the country. This initiative is part of Senegal's new industrialization project. The construction of the phosphate mining plant aims to create jobs and strengthen local resources in response to economic challenges. Augustin Kulit report.
This announcement was made by the Senegalese Minister of Industry, Seconde Diouf, during an interview with the Sun newspaper. The Matam region in northern Senegal is very rich in phosphate, with subsoil containing large reserves, the Minister of Industry said. The minister continues that 3 structuring projects are planned around the Matam phosphate deposits. First, an industrial phosphate processing complex that will be established on 500 to 1,000 hectares, a fertilizer mixing plant that will be financed by the World Bank, and a university specializing in phosphate and its derivatives in order to locally train the skills necessary for the sector. The exploration of this phosphate could also benefit the country's agricultural sector. According to authorities, phosphate mining will produce between 2 and 3 million tons of fertilizer per year. These fertilizers could help increase yields of rice, sorghum, and even corn. As a reminder, when launching their framework for economic and social policies at the end of 2024, the new Senegalese authorities indicated that they wanted to rely on 8 hubs covering the entire territory with a view to developing their economic potentials.
Meanwhile, authorities say more than 100 lifeless bodies of irregular migrants were recovered from the sea in Senegal in the year 2024 following the capsizing of canoes. The permanent secretary of the Interministerial Committee for the Fight Against Irregular Migration, Police Comptroller General Mudu Njang, stated that from 2014 to 2024, more than 71,000 people were reported missing worldwide as a result of irregular migration. It said in 2024 alone, Senegal recorded 105 bodies recovered from canoe sinkings, not including those still at the bottom of the ocean. It stressed the need to deconstruct the idea that Europe is an El Dorado and called for increased awareness-raising activities among young people. The permanent secretary also highlighted the state's effort to increase the number of vocational training centers and promote agricultural projects to provide viable alternatives to young people and encourage them to stay in the country. You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM in Dakar. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Mixed reactions to the Liberian government's decision to fund October election without donor support. National Transitional Council in Mali approves Government Action Program 2025 to 2026. Nigeria, Benin Republic launched SIGMAT connectivity platform to facilitate trade. And still ahead in the news, Ghana's health service heightened surveillance at borders entry points across the country following 4 confirmed Mpox cases. We do have a press review, a guest interview, and sports news. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Don't forget, we are streaming live on wadr.org and join our live streaming on YouTube and Facebook. To some health news now. Ghana Health Service has heightened surveillance at all borders and entry points across the country following the confirmation of 4 Mpox cases. This forms part of strengthened public health measures to limit the potential spread of the virus both within Ghana and from incoming travelers. On Sunday, May 18, the Ministry of Health and the Ghana Health Service confirmed 2 new cases, one recorded in the Greater Accra region and another in the Western region. This brings the total number of confirmed mpox cases in the country to 4. Speaking to WDL's Nadia Tete, Deputy Director of Ghana Health Service, Dr. Caroline Randolph Amisa said all ports of entry have been placed on alert to enhance surveillance and screening processes.
Yes, these additional 2 cases are not contacts of the 2 initial cases, so they are not epidemiologically linked. If you come into contact with a person with the illness, you will develop SAVE. And we are saying that currently the additional 2 have not had contact with the previous 2. So these are new cases altogether.
Is there some form of contact tracing going on in these additional 2 cases?
I'm happy to say that once we got the first report of the 2 confirmed cases, we activated all our public health emergency operation centers, so national, linking up with all the regions and districts. There's been some communication to our regions. And as part of the management public health measures that we take, because it is a contact disease, we need to follow up and identify persons who have come into contact with these persons who have reported or who have been confirmed to have the cases. So we are currently doing that and tracing contact for these persons.
At the moment, is there anything going on in relation to cross-border surveillance? Because as we do know, Liberia has equally confirmed some cases, and so has Togo.
Yes. So what we have done as part of activating our public health measures, we have alerted all our facilities. We have also alerted our borders. You know that for us, we have various ports of entry, so it's not just the borders with Togo, wherever people are coming in. So people who are confirmed, we do take their history. So we are interested in their travel history. We are interested in where they have been to, who they have been in contact with, what they do, where they stay, who they live with. We do follow up for all these to find out. So we have activated all these other ports of entry that you are aware of.
Deputy Director of the Ghana Health Service, Dr. Caroline Randolph Amisa.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
We head now to Monrovia, where our correspondent Brian Parker is on standby for the newspaper review.
We begin with the Daily Observer News. Legislature no longer relevant. Renowned cleric calls for an orderly and inclusive governance overhaul. Africans must view their heritage at home and not in museums across. Liberian envoy calls for restitution in African heritage. Liberia Airport Authority investigates alleged theft of passenger belongings at the Rabas International Airport. Up next is the Independent newspaper with these stories. No unification without inclusive government. Tiawan Gonglo assets has raised Boaka's cabinet appointment process. Illegal foreigners outnumber citizens as land conflicts loom. We move to the news. The nation's news stop AIDS. Boaka deeply concerned as 34,000 HIV-infected persons in Liberia. Front page Africa newspaper. JFK treating patients in plastic chairs. Senate report pings a green picture of Liberia's health system. Chemistry for new conflict. Front page Africa investigation reveals Speaker Coons committee appointments violate House rules. Minority bloc raises concern. And our last stop is the Inquirer newspaper. Iman Klai calls for legislative dissolution if, and the next story says, Liberia Immigration Service Commissioner General Destinate Rufus Elimes over Burkina B in flaws. That does it for this Tuesday's edition of Press Review for Liberia's capital. Thanks for listening.
Many thanks, Abraham Parker.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is a guest.
Our interview this afternoon is on the plans by the Ivorian government to self-fund the October presidential elections. While this has drawn reactions across the political space, a civil society actor and governance expert Kopep Dabagat sees it as an opportunity to break from the norm, which has been elections partly funded by international donors. He is our guest on this edition of Newslink.
So it's a welcome idea here, an African country,
beginning to assert itself and saying, okay, we can take care of our business. The extent to which that now is a reality, I am really not quite sure, because for some time now we know that cocoa, which is one of the major export commodities of Cote d'Ivoire, which is one of the major foreign exchange earners, has been experiencing some sort of glut in the international market. So I am personally wondering where such funding will come from, but perhaps with prudent management of state funds and with committed accountability, I think that is possible, despite the fact that a lot of African countries do have this gap in terms of resource mobilization and resource utilization. I think the Ivorians know what they are doing by saying that they're going to fund their election. So, well, let's wait and see. There's still a few more months from here ahead to October for us to see the credibility, of how Cote d'Ivoire plans, to fund its own elections.
Do you think there will be transparency in the entire process if the election will eventually be self-funded by the Ivorian government?
Yes, well, you have already said that they've said they are going to fund their elections by themselves. But both you and me know that, let's take the history of the last 10 years, elections within Africa are usually never funded fully by any government. There are a lot of operations, whether it is in the form of assistance, in the form of procurement of equipment, and all that. Even if a country says it will go it alone and be able to fund everything, you find out that this does not usually add up when you put the aggregate cost of the elections together. So coming out to make this very clear statement of Cote d'Ivoire tells me or leads me to think that perhaps they have now a different approach from what we have been seeing. But if it is going to be the same approach where you can have some sort of assistance here or there, then we may not be able to totally say that it is fully funded by the government, by the country.
Our civil society actor and governance expert Kopet Dabagat. Well, in sports news, Malian Jara and Senegal's Enjoy help APR Basketball Club to extend the impressive run in the 2025 Nile Conference. Well, Sankle Dakar is here with details of the story. Sankle.
Yes, you're right there. Let's begin with basketball because, like you rightly said, Malian center Aliou Jara and Senegalese Youssouf Ndoye inspired Rwandan side APR Basketball Club to maintain their 100% record in the Nile Conference. The duo helped APR Basketball Club extend their impressive run in the 2025 Nile Conference with a commanding 103-81 victory over struggling South African side MBB. The game held at the buzzing BK Arena in Kigali saw the Rwandan side overturn an early deficit to dismantle their South African opponent with poise. Of course, this was done right in front of Paul Kagame. So in some football news, of course, in the surprising events, the Confederation of African Football (CAF) has struck a groundbreaking sponsorship deal with guess who? European Union. The EU is now the official sponsor of the CAF Africa Cup of Nations or AFCON for the upcoming 2025 tournament as well as the 2027, in Kenya and Uganda and Tanzania, as well as the African Women Cup of Nations in Morocco. And finally, of course, as the league UEFA Champions League between PSG and Inter Milan approaches, the UEFA is taking hardline stance against wave of illegal ticket sales that marred preparations for the 31st showdown in Munich, with demand reaching unprecedented level of over 1.2 million requests for just 70,000 seats from both clubs facing ticketing nightmare. UEFA has warned that tickets bought outside its official channel can be cancelled at any time, with buyers denied entry or possibly facing prosecution.
I guess that includes my own ticket request.
Why would you request a ticket when Liverpool is not in the final?
Well, it doesn't matter. Thank you, Sankle, for sports news. And we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening. And many thanks to Falilu So and Umudenugo for the technical support. Do connect with us on all of our social media platforms, X, Instagram, at WADR English. I am Imo Edet. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New Me FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County.
Radio